Hi, thanks for tuning in to the Future of Out of Home event today. I'm Michaela Jefferson, news editor at Mediatel News. And in this session, we're going to be taking a look at what good out of home looks like, how technology is transforming creativity in this sector, and some of the best outdoor campaigns from the past 12 months. I'm joined by three excellent panelists and out-of-home experts for this discussion. We've got Dan Dawson, who is Chief Creative Officer at Grand Visual, which is a production company providing creative services for digital out-of-home. Curtis Weir, out-of-home Group Director at Publicis Media, and Emily Hyne, Business Director at specialist out-of-home media agency Talon Outdoor. So thank you to all of you for joining me today for this chat. I just want to start straight in the deep end and ask each of you what the most important thing to consider is when you're thinking about putting together an out-of-home campaign from the creative or visual perspective. So Dan, let's start with you.
It's a tough one. We work with some of the best creative agencies around the world, and obviously trying to craft creative concepts around the out-of-home space is probably the most important. I think for the most part, you tend to see a hero piece for out-of-home that comes out of a creative agency. But I think, one of the reasons that we've been so successful in the space is that we look for the areas of that concept that can be crafted specifically for audiences or mindsets or environments for the out-of-home space. So for me, I think the most important thing to consider is the craft of the execution and how that's going to play out in the out-of-home space.
Emily, what do you think?
Yeah, similar to Dan, really. I mean, obviously, out-of-home is just an incredibly kind of vast, complex medium, and I think what sets it apart from other media channels is that every format or environment that we work in has quite a unique set of characteristics. Whether it's big, small, like high dwell time, low dwell time, where people are, what they're doing, what mindset they're in when they see it. And for me, I think the best sort of examples of creative within out of home use a core concept, as Dan spoke about, and then they kind of can kind of adapt accordingly based on all those metrics. So just being able to kind of flex that core concept up and down based on all of those different characteristics, I think, is what kind of really nails it.
Okay, great. Curtis, do you have anything to add to that?
Pretty much mirror, sadly, the same points made. Context is everything for out of home. Trying to make sure that your message resonates with people with what's fundamentally from McLuhanism in there straight from the beginning, a cool medium. It's inherently an ambient medium, and it's about making sure that the message that you place on that medium resonates as a result of leveraging the space that is within. So it's about understanding the viewer and how they are going to receive that message within that space, and trying to find a way of being able to use that to help your message travel and land.
Okay, so I found out of home is quite an interesting industry, isn't it? Because it's going through a bit of a technological, revolution. Has been for the last few years. Arguably, that's going to be even more important moving forward as we come out of coronavirus, but we can get onto that in a bit. But I'm just interested in discussing how technology has transformed creativity in out of home. Curtis, do you want to pick that one up?
Sure. I would say that technology is allowing us to work closer together. So obviously we're experiencing that at the moment. Despite the fact that we're in different places and spaces, we're all talking right now on video chat, despite being in having different things and different platforms. And I think what technology is allowing in the out of home space is much the same. If you think the origins of out of home is an absolute logistical feat. Initially, every 2 weeks across the entire country, physical posters used to be posted and pasted on every street corner across the UK. That's really saying something. The medium after over 60 years in its modern guise, had got that down to an art. And then screens happened. But before screens, digital printing happened and allowed you to distribute posters nationally with potentially different messages. There were organizational and structural innovations such as out-of-home specialists that came in that allowed, again, first and foremost, the logistics to get done. And then on top of that, build tools and planning and expertise and the knowledge that comes with all of those things. So though there's been a revolution in terms of digital distribution of messages as a result of digital screens, actually the digitalization of media is something that's happened for decades. Transvision existed for, it's about 20 years old now. So it's not actually a new thing. But what's happened recently is we've been able to work closer together in terms of making sure, just like what we discussed before, that the message that is placed in an environment is unequivocally right for the audience that's reaching it. And all of the permutations that's brought has meant you've seen this surge of imagination and creativity within the space.
So Dan, did you have anything to add to that point about how technology is changing the creativity in this sector?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Curtis. I think the out-of-home space has always had to evolve from early painting of billboards all the way through to printing and posting and trivisions and transvisions and screens, and it's constantly evolved throughout time. And I think that creativity has always followed that. Creativity, the ability to be creative with the medium, has always followed the technical advancements of the medium itself. I run a podcast about creativity and out-of-home called Behind the Billboard, and we talked about a trivision campaign, which these are the panels that turn, they're triangular panels that all changed at the same time. And there was a great execution where someone had purposely posted them in the wrong order until the final execution. So you can see how the creative world and agencies think about the medium and the technical advancements that it's made in order to maintain being relevant and creative with it as a canvas. I think over the last 15 years, and it's the kind of the 15 years that Grand Visual have been around, is the digitization has accelerated that, and the technology that's come in isn't just affecting creativity, but it's affecting how we target audiences as well. And linking those two things up, I think, answers part of Curtis's other point from the first question about resonating with mindsets and audiences. How you understand what audience is in front of a screen or a billboard, and then how you communicate with them. So on the creative side, we're starting to get all of this live data in about what might be affecting someone's mood or where they're going or what they're doing. And on the audience background side, we're starting to understand a bit more about how people move around environments and when they move around environments and what they might be doing. You merge those two things together, you can start to be highly contextually relevant to an audience at an active time. So for us, that means being dynamic with our advertising and being able to update things in real time so that you can really drive the message home and stand out from some of the wallpaper that sometimes appears on out-of-home.
Emily, did you have anything to add to that point?
Yeah, I think Dan and Curtis have covered that really well. But I think just kind of adding to Dan's point about kind of the audience planning side of it, there's definitely, tech has definitely kind of transformed the way that we do planning within out of home. At Talon, we've got an ad tech platform called Ada, which uses kind of behavioral data to enable us to plan or kind of optimize against a particular audience. So going back to what Dan was saying, kind of understanding where people have been recently, whether they've been to kind of competitor stores, points of interest, and trying to kind of segment audiences like that. I think all of these new technology platforms are kind of enabling us to be more creative, but about kind of how we can target bespoke audiences within out of home as well. So I think it is a two-pronged attack. It's like the smart planning, which tech obviously fuels and helps. And then on the flip side as well, the kind of tech that informs kind of better creativity.
So what is it then that, you can get great creative ads in across loads of different media channels, and also with the same sort of brand building weight behind it. But what is it about out of home that can drive a really different type of creativity that other media channels can't, and drive ROI ultimately for clients? Dan, what do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I think out of home is one of those advertising mediums that you can't switch off. You can't skip the ad. I mean, you can turn your head away from it once you've seen it, but you can't. It's not skippable. And I think there's a couple of things that go with that. As an advertising medium and as advertising professionals, we've got a responsibility to for being in that public space. So making sure that all of the content that we create is okay for all audiences, and all people, no matter where it's being displayed. That's the responsibility that the industry has to take. But it's also about being cognizant, as I said, it goes back to mindset, and it's a varied audience all the time, whether they're in transit, in subways, in taxis, in gyms. We've got people doing different things. They're not just on their mobile device. They're not just sitting in front of their TV. They're not sitting driving and listening to the radio. They are doing something else, and our job is to advertise or to get a message to them while they're doing something else. And that kind of changes the way that we approach the communication to them, understanding what it is exactly that they're doing, and how we need to get our message across. So I think that's for me, that's the main difference between out of home and other medium, is that the varying spaces that we play in.
Yeah, so I mean, my favorite type of outdoor advertising is actually bus wraps. I love to see a good bus wrap. I can't remember it was recently. It was an alcohol brand. I think it was a whiskey brand that's got an octopus on it.
It was Kraken.
Yeah, I really liked that one. And like you said, it catches the eye. You don't want to skip it either. Curtis, do you have anything to add to that point?
I think essentially out of home is the public medium.
Mm-hmm.
It's and what I mean by that is for the benefit of brands, it puts them in a place where people can see what you have to say and assess whether they can see themselves within your brand as consumers. I think billboard advertising has always been on some level aspirational. Even the smallest, most intimate advertising is there to make you question your purchase choices and whatever purchase journeys you're on, whilst you're doing your real life journeys and your real life traveling. When you watch television, I feel TV almost works like a portal. It takes you from your living room to somewhere else. Whereas I think out of home works more like a mirror. It reflects your society, it reflects your environment and space. For that reason, kind of what Dan said, you have to make sure the message is inclusive for everybody, even if you are speaking to a specific audience. And I think that's why, people are increasingly taking photos of messages that resonate with them, or photos that of advertising that really offends them, because you're putting advertising in their train station, or on their street corner. It's where they are, and that's what's beautiful about out of home. It's meeting people on their own terms.
Dan, did you have anything to for that?
I did. I'm sorry, I did raise my hand. Something Curtis said actually just really hit me, because I think that we've certainly seen this trend I think this is part of the technology side as well, is that the smaller advertisers really love out of home now, because they can buy in small doses, especially across digital. But when they put their brand on a billboard, it becomes real. Something about their advertising becomes real, because actually at entry level, you can go on digital relatively cheaply. They can do direct to consumer advertising through social relatively cheaply, and for the most part do it themselves. But when they go out of home and they go through an out of home specialist and they get the right sites and they get the right message and they get the right creative working, suddenly their advertising becomes real. And that's why you see people like Casper mattresses and Eve mattresses and those D2C brands who have done really well online, really enjoying the fact that they're on out of home. And I think that's something that we should embrace and keep pushing for those smaller brands to get on out of home.
Well, look, let's in that case turn towards some of our favourite out of home campaigns. I asked you all to pick one beforehand. Emily, what has been your favourite outdoor campaign of the last 12 months?
Yeah, so I've chosen Virgin Media's Unlimiting campaign. It's not a campaign that I actually worked on, unfortunately, but it's around in the last 12 months, and I'm sure most people kind of saw it when it was up middle of last year. For me, it was pretty unique because it kind of took a data-driven approach to creative solutions in outdoor. And I think historically, they're just two things that we don't see aligned that often. In my mind, I think every year we see really good examples of data being used to fuel and kind of use in outdoor planning. And we also see loads of amazing examples of creative solution executions within outdoor, but seeing the two kind of fuel each other is not something that we see very often. And if we do, it's certainly not on kind of a fully national scale, which is what this campaign did. So it kind of effectively used behavioural data to identify the cities and locations that they should be in to have kind of an audience first view on it. And a lot of those kind of pulled up non-traditional sites, so anything from kind of walkways to lifts to extended building wraps. And the creative kind of strapline around this whole campaign was unlimiting, as you've probably guessed from the title. But so they didn't want any kind of outdoor site to be standard. They didn't want to just run a standard poster. So they ended up running nearly 50 different creative solution executions around the entire country. So everything from a 3D build to a building wrap to a vinyl on the floor. And for me, I think it just kind of encompasses all of outdoors' best strengths. So it kind of used data to pinpoint bespoke locations and audiences. It broke kind of traditional molds of what a panel should look like, and every execution looked different and kind of engaged audiences in different ways. But it didn't compromise kind of what outdoor delivers at best, which is obviously kind of mass broadcast reach. So I think as well, kind of knowing the amount of expertise and collaboration that must have gone into it, it was pretty impressive.
So they did, as part of that campaign, they had a billboard where the creatives spilled out onto the car parking lot next to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So kind of extending some of the vinyls onto building and just things that had never been done before, whether that was, all along the kind of floor of a pavement, fully wrapping tunnels in stations. So kind of finding almost completely new landscapes to fill. So it kind of really kind of married up with their creative strategy.
Did you find that it had, was it a successful campaign?
Yeah, they had amazing results as part of it. As I said, it wasn't kind of part of it, but I know that they did some kind of third-party measurement, and it kind of increased their benchmarks. They ended up having awareness, which was really similar to a competitor brand that spends a lot more than them in the category. So it just goes to show, I think, that creativity can kind of really pay back. But for me, I think you just never really see this use of data to ingested in at the front end to fuel it. We tend to look at outdoor formats and think, what can we do with that and make it look fun? But this was the other way around, which I really liked.
That's a great example. Dan, what was yours?
I think it's a bit conceited because it was one of our campaigns, having chosen it, and talk about why. But I think, and rationalizing it as I did on the email beforehand to you, Michaela, was that some of the rationale behind choosing the Sending Love campaign, which was our campaign during lockdown, was just responding to some of the trends that we're seeing in out of home and bringing them all to life internationally. So the campaign was conceived during lockdown because essentially we found ourselves with very little to do in out of home as the nation and in fact world was going into lockdown. But that does mean that we managed to find the time on Zoom and Zoom calls and Microsoft Team calls to come up with some crazy ideas that could actually work and help people around the world, help people take over billboards that were going largely unsold, obviously. We created a campaign that allowed users to create billboards to send love to the places that they couldn't get to. they were able to go in through a portal and choose their picture and take a picture of them sending a heart shape, and decide where in the world they wanted to send that love to. And it was then displayed on a billboard in that location. And they were also then sent a picture of that billboard so they could share that on social. And the idea around that was that obviously people wouldn't be able to fly to New York and see themselves up in Times Square, but they could share that picture of a billboard. And, you know, part of that was the PRable side was trying to make sure that billboards and out of home stayed relevant at a time where people went out of home, but also because it does something that the out of home is great at, which is the fame place. You know, the interactivity and fame that you can get from getting people to see themselves on a billboard cannot be underestimated, especially for that social value. So extending campaigns beyond the medium that it's on is something that we're seeing as a trend. UGC is obviously a big trend with social and social playing a part in out-of-home campaigns. So it started to bring together some of those things. And then for us, kicking that out across the international plan with our part of the Talon group is a team called Publicis, and it's an international network of independent out-of-home specialists. And what we're able to do there is we were able to then get 45 odd countries and 70 different media owners around the world to partake in the campaign, and we were able to distribute content all around the world, accept submissions from all around the world, and and send content everywhere, and essentially sending love all around the world, which was the insight at the beginning of the campaign idea.
What I quite like about that campaign as well is it really does prove the as you say, the fame driving power of a billboard by the virtue of the fact that so many people were excited about the opportunity of being on a billboard themselves, which really proves like how consumers view that media.
It's something that we've seen quite a few times on some of the augmented reality things we've done. I mean, Pepsi Max is a great example, but some of the stuff we've done in Times Square with Disney, people love seeing themselves on billboards. If you can allow people to be part of your campaign, they will embrace it and they will become ambassadors for the message that you're putting out there. And in this case, it was sending love, but it has been brand activity, and McDonald's and Pepsi and Disney have all done that to great effect with us before. So
really quickly, do you think that in the future we could potentially be seeing a lot more UGC oriented campaigns in out of home?
I really do. I mean, on the back of that campaign, that was one of the campaigns that makes the phone ring, and I think everyone is kind of looking at ways to get the public to be part of their campaigns, because they realize the power that holds as a kind of extension of their campaign, especially socially. So I think a way to join up the digital and out-of-home world is, UGC plays a big part in curating messages and content from people and allowing them to feature as part of your campaign. It really gets the brand in their hands, and that interactivity just creates a memorable moment for people. So I think that is a trend that we'll see going forward, continue to see going forward, but internationally is the trend that we want to see. So the ability to see that in multiple territories and stop seeing things that happen inside borders is something that we really want to drive.
I think it's a really good choice. Curtis, I really like your favourite campaign as well. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So the campaign that I picked was done by a communications agency called Hyne. I guess traditionally would have been regarded as a PR agency, but as things move on and transition, the blurring of boundaries exists as much for us as an industry as it does nationally. And Zenith, which I unashamedly am part of as part of Publicis Media. But if you're not going to rep your own best work, who else is going to? And the brand was Tenor, and Tenor. If you asked, I guess, your average out-of-home planner or comms planner what format and what space you would put a sanitary ware for what is regarded as quite a sensitive subject, you would probably inadvertently say, you know, panels within ladies' toilets or men's toilets. You know, that's kind of generally the environment and the bastion of advertising around sanitary ware and incontinence pads, for good reason, right? There's gender targeting opportunities there. There's some contextual relevance there. But the power of out of home is that it can, one campaign can reposition an entire brand and make audiences feel completely different by a brand in such a visceral, tangible way than I think any other medium can. And this brand just decided just to completely flip the script, working with the planners and the communications agency, and said, how about a big billboard on the busiest retail high street in the UK, Oxford Circus. In fact, if that wasn't enough, how about we get all the roadside D6s across that street? It's an environment where people are, you know, where some of the biggest fashion brands, you know, brands that we all love and use and buy from in order to make us feel good about ourselves, to be able to put our best interest. And what's more, let's take some ladies in their 30s and their 40s, and maybe even older, real people who are our partners, people who are mums, actual real people, not models, and let's put them on our posters. And it just goes for all those things that we talked about. It's about seeing the customer, seeing real human people in public spaces. It's about championing and heroing the customer as much as it is about championing and heroing the brand. It's, you know, it's user generated. It's not just a campaign execution or it is the campaign. It's actually what the message is. So yeah, I just absolutely love it.
I like that campaign too, and I think partly because it does quite a good job of using its power of advertising to shape, you know, consumer perspectives on important social issues, and you know, removing that stigma around, you know, sanitary ware or whatever it is. We're unfortunately almost out of time, so I kind of just want to round this off by asking what your final piece of advice would be in, you know, a quick fire piece of advice for any brand or agency that's currently planning its next out of home campaign. What is, you know, if you could just say one thing to them, what would it be? Emily, let's start with you.
I think mine would probably be make sure that you are thinking about data and creativity. I think, you know, the two of the kind of core themes, I think, moving into probably second half of the year and probably beginning of next year for brands is going to be effectiveness will probably be important to most, I would imagine, and also kind of creative standout, because there's going to be a lot of kind of battleground targeting. So I think making sure that you're kind of challenging your agencies to push the boundaries from that point of view, and kind of, yeah, push them to kind of make sure that you're kind of doing both in, you know, the smartest possible.
Great. Dan?
Yeah, I agree with them. I think there is going to be very high occupancy in Q3 and 4 on out of home, so the creative has to stand out. I think the one word I would say, and I said at the beginning, is craft. Make sure you craft creative around the media and media around the creative. Make sure the two are working together. If one outweighs the other during this busy period, it's going to die, and it will become wallpaper. And the brands that do embrace creativity and media together will stand out, and those will be the ads that people remember. So if it'd be one word, it would be craft. Make sure you're crafting both creative and media together.
Great. And just to round us off, Curtis, what would you say?
The best campaigns I've worked on have never even had a brief. So this is my plea, I guess, to not just out of home specialists, but the entire media and advertising industry, which is get out and talk to each other. The best work is always a collaborative effort. It's about actually thinking in new ways and framing new opportunities for clients. And I think we need to be bold. If we've needed to be bold before, the boldness that we need moving forward in order for our industry to thrive, but also for our clients' businesses to thrive, is so needed. And I think our clients will only thank us for taking great ideas and great thinking that helps them to stand out, get noticed, and build connections with customers.
Okay, great. 3 excellent pieces of advice to end on. Unfortunately, we are going to have to leave it there, but it's been great to speak with all of you. Thank you for joining me for this discussion, and hopefully we'll speak again soon post lockdown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.